Aloha. Welcome to the last panel session. This panel is Teaching Revisionism and Activism. And we have a fantastic panel. Our speakers are dedicated to passing on what future teachers, cultural practitioners, organizations, and activists need to know. That's according to the program. My name is Imaikalani, and I'm the moderator. I'm an emeritus retired administrator from UH Manoa. My program was called Student Equity, Excellence, and Diversity, and we had about 20 different programs for Native Hawaiians, Filipinos, students with disabilities, LGBT, and lots of other groups that are usually marginalized in higher education. I think all my programs would now be illegal in Florida and Texas, and I would be a criminal, I guess. But anyhow, my claim to fame is that I helped co-found a program called Operation Manong 52 years ago that provided tutorial bilingual assistance to newly arrived immigrants. The co-founder of the program is David Foreman's mother, and I used to know David when I was tall, and I was taller than David when I first met him. We have 4 panelists, and I'll introduce them very briefly so they have a lot more time to talk. Shannon Cristobal is the co-chair of Tinalak Filipino Education Advisory Council at the College of Education. Imaikalani Winchester is a revolutionary Kanaka Maoli educator in the Hawaiian charter school movement. Nālani Balutski is a faculty specialist with the Hawaiian Knowledge School and Native Hawaiian Student Services. And Vernadette Gonzalez is a professor of ethnic studies at the University of California, Berkeley, but she was formerly here at UH Manoa. So I'll ask Shannon to please present briefly, and then after that we could have our audience ask questions. So, Shannon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us in our session today. I guess I will get it started. I know you briefly introduced me, but I'm also a PhD. Oh, actually, am I candidate? Oh, okay. I just finished defending my dissertation last month, so I'm sorry, Dr. Shannon. I'm still getting used to it, so sorry. I'm so sorry. Out of the College of Ed Foundations, and I'm the former Director of Education at the Hawaii Council for the Humanities, and I worked for them for the last 5 years with the Hawaii History Day. And the talk today was to talk about teaching revisionist history and activism. And for me, and the work that I do, and the dissertation that I wrote, has a lot to do with history and education, and turning that education and history into activism and civic engagement. And so, with that said, for me, I wanted to share, according to what we were supposed to discuss today, what we are sharing with future teachers and what is important. And for me, being in the field and seeing students in K-12, seeing students, the importance of teaching revisionist history is there's a lot of students that are having issues with mental health, especially Filipinos. I can speak on when it comes to Filipino demographics. The mental health issues and wellness that they are facing right now because of the identity an identity crisis due to not knowing their history. And I can say that for myself also because although I'm a 5th generation Filipino that was born and raised in Hawaii, I got into, I went down this path because I wanted to learn my history. I needed to learn because I didn't know what to teach my own children. And I didn't want them to have to suffer we were talking about this earlier, about the colonial mentality and the decolonial journey that we've been on all these years. And so, for me, my bachelor's is in English from UH West Oahu, and I focus on Asian American, Filipino American literature. My master's is in American Studies, but also again on Filipino American literature and identity. And then I moved to education because I felt that that's where my work could be most utilized, was not just theory but practice and teaching in the K-12 in the DOE. And that's why the program or the project that I'm working on right now with Patricia Halagao and a slew of other amazing teachers, educators, scholars from the University of Hawaii and across the UH system through the community is bringing this curriculum, Filipino history curriculum, to the DOE, and it's taken us years to get it. And it's been built upon many other scholars, Filipino scholars from the past also. So with that said, this is just the start, and I'm honored and privileged to be on this journey with them and with this panel also, because we just got to know each other just a few minutes ago. We share a lot in common. Share a lot. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to pass this on. Is that okay?
I want to start with holding it up. Sorry, I'm break the time. Sorry, I do that to break my own nerves. But I also do it because it's an important moment to recognize the space that we're in, to recognize the geopolitical history of this place, as we get to sit here and talk about not the past, but also the present, but as we sort of like eyeball the future. It's always good for us to sort of, I think, recenter ourselves. And I think we're talking about education. And so I want to introduce myself, and I'll talk a little bit, I'll share some more. My name is Imaikalani, Winchester. I'm Kanaka Maoli, born and raised on Oahu. I was fortunate to have a bunch of privilege to go to a bunch of different schools, where I ended up here at the University of Hawaii. Right there, Kane Wailo'i is where I was born again, I guess you could say, where my feet spent some considerable time in the patch and I grew my roots. The other part of my consciousness was raised here in Hawaii and in these buildings with Humu John, with some of the other professors who I see, I hear their lessons. Their names are constantly repeated throughout the day, and so I'm very happy to be welcome, or to be invited here today to speak a little bit about education, because education really transformed my life. And so today, I serve as maybe two major things. One, I'm a PhD student, I guess technically, I forgot to write that in my bio. I have a few more steps before I can graduate. But before that, most of my research actually studies what I spent 20 years of my life doing. One was my role, 1 foot in the door, at the Hawaiian Charter School movement, which started in 2001, which was sort of this natural progression from what Hawaiian immersion and Kula Kaiapuni had been in towards of waking up and empowering our Hawaiian communities. So in 2001, Kuka Hakalau, very important wahine, and leader, the matriarch, I guess, of the Hawaiian Charter School movement, allowed us to have this vehicle, this avenue, this vessel, this pirate ship, I like to call it, to give us a school with a deficit, but a school with a new purpose and a new vision. And I guess what we have aspired to do with this vessel, with the Hawaiian Charter School, is to really foundationalize and normalize Hawaiian culture, Hawaiian identity, Hawaiian power. And part of that exercise comes with responsibility, comes with kuleana, it comes with a privilege, it comes with burden. And those are things that we try to embrace holistically as a school. And so for many, many years, I've spent sort of my one hand in that cookie jar. On the other hand, in the community, for 20 years or so, I've also spent, and I've committed some time to the celebration of Kalahoʻihoʻiʻea, the oldest Hawaiian national holiday in Hawaii, which just like Hawaiian language, which just like Hawaiian culture, just like Hawaiian nationalism, we talked about erasure and the obliteration of our identity. Much of that identity included not just our Kanaka culture, but also our national identity as well. And so, for us to be whole, and this is something that I read from one of my professors here at the university, Dr. Lili Kala, if we are to ever be whole, just like if this lo'i behind us is ever to see its full potential, we need to watch and take care of the po'owai, the makawai, the kahawai, mauka, makai. The entire system needs to work in order for us to be our full selves. So for 20 years ago, I met an important man named Dr. Kekuni Blaisdell, who since 1985 had put a small celebration back together at Thomas Square. In 2005, I was lucky enough to receive sort of kuleana, the torch as it were, on behalf of our generation. Many people here today who have presented have been a part of the celebration of Kalahoʻihoʻiʻea in the spirit of sovereignty restoration. Somebody asked the question earlier, what is it going to take in terms of restoration? Mahalo to the previous panel who talked about restoration in the physical sense. But I would posit and opine that sovereignty, restoration, is an important part of the physical restoration, the spiritual restoration, the cognitive restoration that I think is important. And so my research kind of takes a look at that in some ways. As a student and as a teacher, and now as a researcher, an indigenous researcher, I guess they like to really emphasize. I want to push back just a small bit on revisionism. Kalama, I don't necessarily understand it totally, but I don't necessarily see the history classes that I teach as revisionism per se. We call our history class, which is a mixture of whatever, Hawaiian history, US history, participation in democracy, all of these fun standards that whatever deal you got to do. But we call it mo'olelo. Mo'olelo for those of us in Hawaiian is storytelling. So for us, we frame our story, our struggle, our resistance through mo'olelo, through those methods that I think are important and meaningful and last longer, I think so, typically than content, than quizzes. And finally, before I kind of close it up so I can pass the microphone over, one of the things I think is incredibly important, and I'm going to be studying a little bit more in my PhD research, are three major things that I kind of take a look at. I look at in defining what I hope to make a critical study of pedagogy, of a popular Hawaiian liberation pedagogy, popular education is that which exists beyond the schools, beyond the classrooms, beyond the K through 12, but this is education for the nation, for the people. So popular education, which was posited first by a famous man by the name of Paulo Freire, when applied to the Hawaiian theory, when applied to black struggle, red struggle, when applied to indigenous struggle, and applied here in Hawaiian struggle, we see that we are more alike. When you apply to the Filipino struggle, the Guåhan struggle, we're all alike. And the fracture between us, the social, the economic, the cultural, the racial, the ethnic, all these fractures really serve to empower one, and that is the imperial regime. And I think that moments like this where we can build one, conscientization, which is a higher degree of understanding through education, is important. Second is resistance, because once you know, you can't help but fight back. If you get a good teacher, at least, I mean. And the last thing is, what is the goal, you know? What is the goal? And the goal is independence, restoration, it's transformation, it's liberation. And so, Kalaho'iho'i ea, the celebration of the famous words, o mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono, the sovereignty, the independence, the future of Hawaii rests in the work, the pono work of its people who are committed and dedicated to seeing it through. The work is not pau, just like the Imperial Project is not any event, right? Neither is restoration. It's a process, and we need to be committed to that process. We need to explore opportunities beyond the American box to find unity and alliances with international partners who struggle through different language, but through similar experiences, and I think that's gonna make us stronger. And if we could begin to take our kids, and this is what I want for the next wave, and this is what I encourage everybody to think about. What is the next wave? If there was immersion schools and then charter schools, what is the next wave? I would like to see, and I would love to hear Nālani's research on top of this, is how can we get our kids into international abroad studies again? How can we revive our elele lahui? How can we create that future for ourselves? If we're gonna dream big, we'll dream real big. And I don't think we gotta look too far. We just gotta look into our own genealogy first. And so I think that education always starts with knowing who we are and knowing who we are not. And I think in the very famous halls, we can honor the great Honani K. Trask words, we are not American. So we cannot just say it in our dreams, we cannot just say it in our hearts, we need to live it, we need to act it, we need to put it in our hands, in our feet, on our shoulders, and carry it every single day. And show each other some aloha, because, oh, it's hard. It's super hard, but super fun too. And so, mahalo for giving me a moment to speak a little bit about, I think, what is important for us, which is Hawaiian popular education. Mahalo.
Maya and I just ran into each other this morning. I was like, what are you going to talk about? I don't know. What are you going to talk about? But I'm glad whatever you just set me up. I was like, oh, perfect. Okay. I have something to talk about now. Aloha mai kako. My name is Nālani Balutski. I am a faculty specialist in the Hawaiʻi New York School of Hawaiian Knowledge. So I don't spend too much time in the classroom. I do teach a couple classes, but most of my work is creating programs for Hawaiian students on this campus. This is home to the largest body of Hawaiian students engaged in higher education in the world. There's about 3,000 Hawaiian students, including 210 doctoral students, myself and Imai. What is that? That makes us like 1% right there. So my dissertation, I'm actually defending next month, May 8th. I have to start practicing even my title. So my title is The Educated Hawaiian State, Preserving the Hawaiian Kingdom Independent and Prosperous. So that second part of the title is actually a quote from Matao Kekuanoa in 1864. He was the president of the Board of Education for the Hawaiian Kingdom. He was also father of two Hawaiian mo'i, or kings, Alexander Liholiho Lot. Brilliant man, had quite a tenure up until that time. He was like 40 years at that point working for Hawaiian leadership and executing, the vision of the Hawaiian state. So my dissertation, my central theme is that it's a survey, so I survey a lot of the policies, laws, attitudes of Hawaiian ali'i in creating the educational system in the 19th century Hawaiian Kingdom. It's most of our understanding of the educational system in the 19th century, most contemporary scholars post-1898 has been writing about the educational system in the 19th century as something that was imposed. The architects were the missionaries who forced, laws, policies, and an educational system on Hawaii. My dissertation challenges those narratives and positions Hawaiians as the architects of our educational system. And we have semblances of that even in popular education today. We have these narratives like, it's plastered on t-shirts, he au puni pala pala ko'u, right? That's a quote attributed to Kauikeoli, Kamehameha III, who says, mine will be a kingdom of literacy. So we have these like small narratives here and there, but the pervasive narrative is still, it's not our system. It was something imposed and brought with missionaries. So that's something I think I'm gonna just spend a couple minutes quickly talking about because the, kind of this whole 2 days has really been about what has been the contextual factors of 1898 and its ongoing ramifications and the ways that all of us are still tangled up in 1898, right? It's been an awesome 2 days. I've been hearing from such like diverse perspectives and even from around the world. But perhaps I'll hone in on a couple things that I think makes Hawaii really unique. And when we're talking about education, even today, right? 1898 was very impactful for education in Hawaii because the 40, 50 years prior to that was this beautiful, I think one of the most beautiful stories of this innovation, this momentum, like this upward, of progress, of huge educational milestones that were achieved in an independent state that was architected by Hawaiian leadership, that were thinking about education, that's only my field of study, in very, very unique ways. For example, the first college in the Hawaiian Kingdom, anybody know? First college in the Hawaiian Kingdom? 1831, Lahaina Luna. Lahaina Luna opens as a teacher training college. Teacher training colleges in the United States and other part of the world, that's not the first, like in American higher education, the first, universities are for the elite, they're for the clergy, and they're for white men. The Hawaiian Kingdom's first college was educating all people of color, all Hawaiian, in our language, and training to be teachers. 3 years after our first college opens up, it's also home to the press. We say that an important part of this, this project of education that we're doing here is that we need to, not only the press, so the first newspapers in Hawaii and the first newspapers, I don't know what the quote is, something about west of the Rockies or something, first printing press west of the Rockies at Lahaina Luna, the home of the first press, but also the creation of curriculum. So the Lahaina Luna printing press also published just dozens and dozens of geography textbooks and math books, all in Hawaiian, and a project of Hawaiians. Hawaiians were doing this. So yeah, without taking up too much more time, but there's 4 more decades worth of that kind of educational innovation that happens, including what he just left off with in 1880. This is like right up, on the heels of this. 1880, the Hawaiian Kingdom also, as far as I know, I always say this, somebody one day will check if this is a good data point, but what I say is arguably the first government-sponsored study abroad program in the world was created by the Hawaiian Kingdom. So the 1880, and not just, some mo'i just being frivolous with money and sending his kids. No, this was a legislative appropriation introduced through the Hawaiian Kingdom legislature. Representative Robert Ho'opili Baker suggested it, and it actually came out of the appropriations for the Department of Foreign Affairs, not the Department of Education, but over approximately $100,000 over 4 legislative sessions were appropriated for this purpose, to send Hawaiians abroad to get an education. And we didn't do this because we thought that our educational system here was insufficient. I graduated from Kamehameha 20-something years ago, and when I graduated, it was like, oh, you gotta go away because, there's no good education here. No, that's not what the Hawaiian Youth Abroad was in 1880. Our educational system up until that point in 1880 was very, very comprehensive, robust, and amazing. We didn't create a study abroad program because ours wasn't sufficient. It was more to supplement this really robust and great preparation that they had here in Hawaii. But yeah, the Hawaiian Kingdom Legislature supported 18 students that studied abroad in 6 different countries: the United States, Scotland, Italy, England, China, Japan, and the United States. And unfortunately, what my dissertation actually, I think that trajectory, that uphill of like all this progress and educational innovation, 1887 is actually a turning point, right? With the Bayonet Constitution, strips a lot of, like it defunded the Hawaiian Youth Abroad program and recalled all these students home. Ironically though, many of those or alumni of that program, like Robert Wilcox and a few others, they return home to fight for, their country, and they were sent abroad for that purpose, to return home to serve this place and serve Hawaiian interests, and that they did. So it's just an interesting point. I guess where I'll end is my work today. Serving students today in 2024, right? We do a lot of research and history-oriented programming because we think of, so like for me, sorry, one more. When I started working here at UH Manoa about 16 years ago, I used to always say, oh, I'm first-generation college student, I'm first-generation college student. And I used to be really proud of that because my parents and my grandparents didn't go to college. And then I surveyed this understanding of the 19th century, right? And after 10 years of this research, I'm like scratching my head like, okay, something's not adding up. So I ended up going into the archives and looking at the earliest yearbooks at UH Manoa, convinced that what I now know about the preparation for, in the Hawaiian Kingdom, that we were all, going to school and college was a big thing. I was like, I bet you there's actually a lot of Hawaiians that were in the earliest years at Manoa. I literally found my great-grandmother, and I mean, she was my first babysitter. I don't know how we didn't know this, but she came to Manoa for a year, and I was like, of course. And then I do a little bit more research. She's not even the first generation in my family, because then I'm like, wait a minute. My great-great-grandfather that I was talking to you about, I was like, yeah, he worked for the Hawaiian Kingdom. He probably went to Lahaina Luna. Sure enough, I found him. He went to Lahaina Luna. So technically, I'm far from first-generation college student, but it's because that narrative because 1898 destroyed that. So prior to 1898, I was already a third-generation college student because it was a different administration, right? So those are the things that taking students today, like I said, my work today, I do spend some time in the classroom, but we create programs that take students into the archives because it's this idea of Hawaiian independence, it's not aspirational. We already did it. So when you said something about, what is the goal? It's independence and it's restoration. So we have a blueprint. We literally have archives. They say we have the biggest archive of any other indigenous people, right? That's some of the quotes in the world. We can go on the grounds of Iaialani Palace and see the receipts for that Hawaiian Youth Abroad program. And I can tell you on July 1st, 1882, Robert Wilcox bought some socks in Italy. And his textbooks and his grades, it's incredible. The blueprint is there. And you said yesterday, archives that shape our understanding of 1898, and we have archives that shape our understanding even before that, that gives a perspective of how destructive 1898 was, and downhill. But sorry for taking up so much time. Mahalo.
That's great. I could just listen to her, actually. Tell me more. So I'll keep my remarks really short. I'm going to zoom back a little bit because I feel like I want to kind of think about the present moment and the value of each of your work, right? Like the specificity, the value, the treasures that your research means to the community. Because I think we find ourselves today where things like ethnic studies things like critical race studies, things like indigenous studies are an incredible moment of danger, right? I mean, one could ask when are they not ever? But I think these days, right? Like there's a particular intensity to authoritarianism, to anti-blackness, to homophobia, to transphobia, right? We see the rise of the radicalized right wing. We're seeing sort of the drumbeats of this incredible anti-intellectualism, right? Anti-community, anti-everything happening, especially on the continent. But we also see kind of ways in which these set of values, right, are starting to get echoed here in our own, in this university, right? Like we're being asked to think about particular kinds of rubrics of like jobs, right? Like as if the only value of education is to provide a wage rather than to enrich the mind and to create the kind of community of artists and activists and farmers and teachers that we all need as a society, right? To nurture ourselves. And so I think we're seeing this like incredible backlash, and it's a backlash because grappling with the collective difficult work of decolonization is hard work. Right, it's hard work. It's messy work. It's getting in the lo'i. It's getting mud like under your fingernails. And I think grappling with like enlivening and animating the kinds of linkages, the working connections that our students need to kind of build the toolkits, right? The critical toolkits that will make them not like good citizens of the nation, because that's not what we want. Right? We don't want good citizens of the nation. We want good people. We want good people. We want good people to nurture each other. We want good community members, right? And so I want us to like not even think about like the nation, because that's not what I think none of us are interested in that really in the end, right? So it's really about creating the kinds of communities and of care, right? That will see us into the future. So we're seeing, I just moved to Berkeley last year, and I immediately got drawn into a fight because like what we're seeing in California. So California has passed AB 101, which actually mandates the teaching of an ethnic studies class, which is like boom, wow, right? Like it's incredible. And this is like in contrast to places like Texas and Florida, which is like completely denying that slavery even happened, right? And so you're seeing that education is really at the sort of, is the battleground, right? Where we're even having to justify telling our stories. And so I just wanted to kind of talk about that as a particular kind of context for the importance of educational work and the kind of research that they're doing, because this is the kind of research we need to kind of hold up to the light and say, yeah, look, we already did it. We're already doing it, right? So this past semester, I got to teach for the first time in a really long time, because when I was in Manoa, I was directing the honors program, and I didn't really get to teach my content classes. And this semester, I'm teaching a class on Philippine X narratives of empire, which has been incredible. It's been a blast. One of the guiding questions, I have two guiding questions for the class, right? One is, what is the story of power in the kind of narrative that you're encountering? Tell me the story of power. What's happening here, right? What's being established in terms of the story of power that you're learning about? And the students are amazing. They're understanding structures of imperialism. They're understanding, capitalism. They're also understanding stories of power in terms of communal power, right? So that's been really great. And then the other question has been, where is the Filipino? Because it's a Filipino X class, right? Where's the Filipino in this story? And we're thinking about the Filipino in the St. Louis exposition, the reservations where indigenous Filipinos are being displayed as if they were in a zoo, right? We're talking about the Filipinos in Carlos Bulosan's account, right, of America as in the heart, just sort of like relentlessly circulating as laborers, as cheap labor up and down the West Coast. We're talking about Filipinos during COVID, right, and where they are as care workers on the front lines in New York. And then we're talking about Filipinos in Hawaiʻi and what it means to be Filipino in Hawaiʻi, right? and understanding ourselves vis-a-vis the Hawaiian struggle for sovereignty, right? And one of the most inspiring moments was when students started to make the connection between all these kinds of themes about where the Filipino is, American imperialism, Palestine, right? When they recognized that what's going on in Palestine had all these echoes of what was happening in 1898, right, in the Philippines, and they're recognizing narratives of photography, right, photographic narratives of the war that they're seeing in the present, and thinking about, you know, the bodies of Filipinos in trenches in the Philippines, right? And then thinking through the circuits of where the Filipino is, because the Filipino is there, right? Because the United States transited through Hawaiʻi, right? And then transited back, right, through Hawaiʻi as laborers and then to the West Coast. And so they're starting to make these connections, and it's exactly that. Those are the kinds of connections we need our students to be making in this moment where authoritarianism is on the rise and they're denying the stories of our connections. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Shannon, I'd like to give you a little more time because you didn't have much time earlier. And also, I know you've got a lot to say about, I would like you to talk a little bit about the Filipino Curriculum Project and what you're doing in Tinalac.
Okay, thank you so much, Amy. Yeah, I didn't know where to start at the beginning because there's just so much to share. Thank you for the time. So for Tinalac, it's the Education Advisory Council. So the goals and missions for the council is actually to increase more Filipino educators in the DOE and professors in the college at the university level, either at the community college or at the university. So we have been trying to support different initiatives, different programs or projects to increase Filipino teachers in the schools. So we started a scholarship, or Patricia and Nikki, or actually it's the Nikki Labario scholarship that we started, that I think it's in its third or fourth year now, that supports undergraduate and graduate students with scholarships to continue either with their academic career and also either for travel to conferences and other things. So that's one aspect. And then we also do, gosh, this year has been a little different because we've been so busy with the Filipino Curriculum Project. So this year we didn't have our Filipino Curriculum Book Fair, which we've done in the past. So that's Tinalac, and actually Tinalac has been supporting the Filipino Curriculum Project or program, when we passed the legislation for that work to be done. And gosh, where do I start with the Filipino Curriculum Project? So last night we showed the short film. Some of you were there, and the project was started by a group of students from private and public schools that pushed this curriculum to the legislation and to their schools to basically have representation through a course. So one class, and the class is now, it has passed through legislation, it has passed DOE approval, which is an incredible amount of work, and now it will be taught in, right now, I think we're in about, if I'm not mistaken, about 8 to 10 schools, but we have about 30 teachers signed up for the professional development course in June. And Farrington High School actually has 8 courses that will be taught in the fall, and Waipahu High School has about 6. And the course itself, or the class itself, has been a labor of love for a lot of these educators, scholars, because we don't have funding for it, so we've been doing it for the love of the students. And so, gosh, I don't know where to. Yeah. Thank you.
I would I'm into numbers. Every fourth person you bump into in the state of Hawaii has Filipino ancestry. We're underrepresented, severely underrepresented at Manoa, at the graduate level, and particularly at the faculty level. And so the efforts that we want, for example, we just got some positions, but through the legislature, and we keep on suggesting, complaining. For example, the Philippine language faculty member died or something more than a decade ago, and never had one full-time faculty member, and it's over 20% Filipino. But we are making a lot of headway, and places like Waipahu, 68% Filipino, Barrington High School, 68% Filipino, and with some of our programs here, we're able to use federal money to have Ilocano and Samoan language teachers. So there are these communities that are still invisible, that are very large actually, and are struggling, and something that we have to pay attention to is to respect and support their efforts as well. And so the efforts that Tinawak and others are doing, I really appreciate it. At this time, I'd like anyone else to read some questions from the audience. Good call, I mean. Okay. Yeah. Any questions or comments? Yes, Tom. Was that a question to me? Oh, okay. Well, 100 years ago, at the same time that this university was founded, I came to Hawaii. This year is the 60th anniversary of my 21st birthday, and also the 60th anniversary of me coming to Hawaii as an East West Center student. And so I've been around a while. I knew John Hawaiʻi way before he went to law school even, and lots of other people. But at that time, we had a lot of issues, and my friends and I ended up doing a lot of anti-Marcos work in Honolulu. I think my fiscal officer asked me once, why do you need an electric stapler? And that was because I needed it for our newsletter against Marcos. And then after that, we started Operation Mano. Before that, we started Operation Mano just because the immigration law changed, and there were lots and lots of immigrants, primarily from the Philippines, in the public schools that were being harassed and bullied. And we decided, that isn't fair. And so we got college kids to be tutors, and when one was looking, we got federal money and state money, and the day after we got to this schools, by the way, we worked not just with Filipino immigrants, but with all immigrants, and we expanded our efforts to do a lot more I would be illegal in Florida. All my programs would be cut off. So I'd like to ask other people in the audience if you have questions.
I'd like to direct this question to Nālani and Imai. It has to do with the university, because both of you, Imai, you have an experience in the charter schools and the education of our young people coming into colleges, and Nālani, the work that NHSS has done has been so, absolutely critical to the development of Hawaiʻi and also the spreading of the understanding of the value of our knowledge throughout this university. This is what we've done, right? And it's at a point really where we also are looking at the ways in which that knowledge is being used for other things that don't really advance our intentions, and our sense of where we're going, and our ability to govern ourselves. So my question is it time for us to leave this university?
Check. Mahalo for that, Kumujan for that important question. Is it time for us to leave the university? Yes, absolutely it is. It's time for us to rediscover, like Nālani said, the blueprint has been there, it's always been there. The loli behind us have always been there. We didn't need to rebuild it, we just need to reveal it. The foreign and invasive trees that canopy the sun and the potential of our people need to be unlearned. We need to remove those obstacles from our pathway. And I believe that if we are ever to be an independent nation, we must learn how to stand separately from what has been the norm. And I consider that the Department of Education, even though I know and we all know that it was Hawaiian Kingdom built. We know that it was a part of the Americanization project, similar to international studies, what Germany had done to Poland, and all these other things like that. But there are processes that exist that I think other presenters today, Keanu's in the back, have spoken to at length before. But I believe, with my experience at the charter school movement, is that there exists, and there will always exist, this ceiling. That the charter school movement has been a safe space. That it has never been a real threat to the state. Therefore, they're going to give us some money, but not enough money. But enough money where we can perform, where we can do these things, and we can take the steps that will make us comfortable. And comfortability makes me uncomfortable. When we stop sweating, when we stop struggling, I think we need to take another look at our course. If we feel that liberation comes through the University of Hawaii at Manoa, then what I say to my kids at Halau Kumana is, if this is the most Hawaiian we're going to be, then we've all failed. And so I apply that likewise maybe to the university as well too. This cannot be, this cage cannot be all we have. Like we've taught, we cannot wait for our liberation. We must go and take it. We have the agency to do it. The blueprints are there. We restore the consciousness. We restore our ability. We restore the logistics and infrastructure, I believe, of education, which means that we need to redefine what education is. We need to redefine what a successful student is. These are the important, I think, dialogues that need to be happening as well too, is what do we need as a nation? Is it only a university? Do we need vocational schools? You know, how do we train the next fisher, the next Lavaia? How do we train the next Mahi'ai? What are these institutions? How can we get DLNR to take care of the Ahupua'a? DLNR, by the way, is Hawaiian Kingdom. But how can we rearrange what's already here? And I don't necessarily see restoring Aina, like we gotta throw everything out. We just gotta find a purpose. And if restoration work has taught me anything, is that if you cannot find a purpose for this, like there is no Opala. There's no such thing as Opala. Everything has a purpose. The trick is to find the purpose and to find the reason for it. And if it doesn't fit, yeah, maybe it is Opala. So some things we need to learn, some things we need to unlearn, but we must have the courage to think beyond what we've already accomplished. And I think for us to extend that into what a Hawaiian National University looks like, what a Hawaiian national education system looks like. And yeah, we always ask the question, if we get keys back to the kingdom tomorrow, and we're in charge, and you're the superintendent, how different does our educational system look? Does it look like theirs? Or does it reflect our principles, our values, our ethics, our goals, our visions for the future? Does it reflect Ea to its core? And I hope that we as a people rise to the great opportunity that we have in our lifetime to truly put the faith, like Anakala Eri said, liu ka pa'akai. Everything we need is here for us. We just need to remember, and the way that we remember is through the work, makahana ka ike. The struggle, the success, all of those things we build up together, but we must be courageous enough to leave the harbor. We cannot just build a va'a. We gotta understand the stars, we gotta understand the currents, we gotta see the manu, but we gotta take that leap. We gotta hammer that rope and we gotta get out of this bay. And I think that's an important step for all of us as Hawaiians is how big of a leap we're gonna take next.
Thanks, boss, for that question. So my good friend Kahele Duklo, brilliant woman, I think she was posed that same question, like, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. It was a Board of Education meeting. And, they're talking about kaiapuni, charter schools, and we're creating, there's been different metaphors used, right? Like, we're creating the pirate ship, because of, the Americanization in our schools for the last couple generations. There's not too much semblance of what it used to be, and you already said that it was ours. But anyway, back to Kale's point, she said, towards like, should we create a new university that's ours? She said, no, you can go take that one, we'll keep ours. And I loved that because actually, and this is something, it's been coming out a little bit, but so most of us think the university opens in 1907, right? It opens its doors in 1907, but actually it has a funky origin story. So the first college at UH Manoa, when they opened their doors in 1907, is the College of Tropical Ag. It was called something else at the time, but College of Tropical Ag Human Resources is the first college. Well, that college was created through a bunch of, like an amalgamation of different research entities that predate 1907. The core of which comes from legislation on January 4th, 1893. Again, January 4th, 1893. So CETAR wrote this like history book, like 100 years of the University of Hawaii. And in that book, they said, that legislation was signed by the Republic of Hawaii. No, it didn't, because the Republic of Hawaii doesn't exist January 4th, 1893. It was signed by Imaikalani 2 weeks prior to the overthrow. So that entity that she signed into law was called the Bureau of Forestry and Agriculture. So it was a research entity. Agriculture was a big industry at the time, and there were actually already some entities that predate that, like, that were interested in studying like soil and the way to maximize crops and all of these kinds of things. But that Bureau of Forestry and Agriculture, you can look it up in the session laws of the 1892 Hawaiian Kingdom Legislature, and it says that we will hold public lectures and classes. So it was both researching but sharing with the community to understand, But that is the precursor for CETAR and the precursor for the University of Hawaii. So Lili'u signed, so so back to the question of should we leave? I'm really bad at metaphors, but this one is coming to mind. But it's kind of like someone stole your car and fucked it up for a really long time, and it's like in the tow yard, and it's, you know, whatever, and you don't want to go get cash from an ATM and get something you know, but do we let, like, it's our freaking car. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so again, I'm really bad at metaphors, but that comes to mind because I'm like, as, it's that piece of ownership, or like, or even like the injustice of something, you know? I think it's a powerful story, even though I might spend the rest of my career just telling, oh, this is ours, you know, like this is what it was, you know, but hopefully the tides will change, you know, hopefully reorienting ourselves to the origin story, the Hawaiian origin story of this educational system here, even if it doesn't look like the one that you know, my kupuna and our ali'i created. I ain't leaving, because even in the last 10 years, I mean, the progress we have made, there are a lot more Hawaiian students on this campus, there are more Hawaiian faculty on this campus, still nowhere near where it needs to be, but leaving is not gonna change that trajectory. And yeah, that's something powerful to reclaim, that most of the infrastructure, most of the educational infrastructure, actually no, most of the infrastructure, period, in Hawaii today is from the Hawaiian Kingdom. You know, everything from I was in a session earlier with Ilima talking about the harbors. You know, one of the first like harbor masters during Kamehameha Ekahi's reign, you know, all of this, how freeing the idea is that most of the conversations we have today, whether it's about climate, the environment, immigration even, all of these things, our ancestors and our country had quarantine even. There were quarantine laws in the Hawaiian Kingdom. So when we reorient ourselves to that Hawaiian blueprint and origin story, it's freeing. Again, back to that piece about it's not just aspirational. We at least have a template, and I think we fail in referencing them and what was already imagined for. Literally, there is an article in the 19th century that talks about the Hawaiian National University, what that should look like. You know, that's a 140-year-old conversation. So we don't necessarily need to have that conversation today in a vacuum without honoring the ways in which we've already imagined what that might look like. But I don't think it means leaving here.
Yeah, in the system that we were working with, I know this building wasn't here before, and we're all on our own as Hawaiians trying to survive. And then now we have this system. And for myself, it was really important that in the system there was a law school, and they're pumping out Hawaiians in the law school. And they were solving a lot of our problems as we went along. But then as Hawaiians, we begin to understand more and more who we are, what happened to us, and all of that. So, oi, Keanu, Choi. So it's funny because this is exactly what I was trying to figure out. As we started to learn about ourselves as Hawaiians, we get higher and higher. And the law school was keeping us out of trouble, trying to do our Hawaiian rights. And the law school was doing stuff about trying to figure out how to get us our water back and all of that kind of stuff. And then now we're beginning to learn that in 1893, this event happened. And I was wondering if this institution is producing the kinds of people that are going to go from the grassroots level problems all the way up to the problem. And figure out, are there any lawyers coming out that are going to be able to do those kinds of things at the international level, or all the lawyers coming out of this school are just going to keep us out of the jail in the state system? So I don't know if I'm asking you the question or I'm asking you guys the question about trying to figure out how this institution is going to advance us as Hawaiian from the low level all the way up to the highest level.
Who would like to reply?
I think it's an important question of thinking about what, I think we have like 4% Hawaiian faculty at Manoa. It's about there, 3 or 4%, which is probably double in the last 15 years. Like 15 years ago was probably 1%. So I think what you're talking about is it's like a structural, like as we get more, there's not enough Hawaiians that are faculty, let alone administration. But I hope those things are changing. I see small examples of the way we're bringing more diverse perspectives into curriculum, pushing back on, I mean, even like, I think in my 15 years being on campus, that period of around 2017 to 2019, when Manoa was kind of a hot spot for a lot of the protests of, in support of Mauna Kea and against the construction of the TMT, a lot of that movement, the people who were on the Mauna, the people who were in leadership positions on the Mauna, were either students or faculty. I don't know, I would probably say like somewhere around 50%, yeah? So that, I mean, moments like that make me think that your question about are we heading in the right direction, about like being reflective of grassroots issues, maybe on a day-to-day basis it's not as prevalent, but then I do see though that COVID kind of changed a little bit of that a lot. Student engagement has completely took a hit. So like our students today in 2024, I'm like shocked that they don't even know about that, about Manoa being this hot spot for activism about TMT, and now it seems like there might be some, and the irony of that is like the research about, kind of Keanu said that this in his last session too, or hinted at this, like a lot of the research about like the status of the Hawaiian Kingdom as like existing into continuity and of a state framework comes from this university. The irony is that this kind of scholarship is coming out of the university while the university simultaneously perpetuates, and it's the same thing with the Mauna Kea movement, right? We are protesting this university's very action. So it's this like, which makes for really good classroom, dialogue and, but yeah, I don't know how to, I know that doesn't totally address your question, but maybe that's just important for us to keep, on our radar to make sure that this place continues to be reflective of the issues that our community needs us to be, fighting for.
Mahalo for that question. I'm going to think a little bit out of the box a little bit. But one of the things that Mauna Kea really showed us was the power of popular education as well too. Pu'uhonu University, which sort of manufactured itself from the lava fields into one of the probably top elite indigenous universities, the degree for non-credit degree programs ever. And so it's really amazing what crisis brings out. And I like to see our people not really react out of crisis, but like respond responsibly. But when we look at how we extend and raise and even reach out to youth and even connect with the ancestors, the elders, the kupuna, and to make those links that they don't have access necessarily to university. Like we shared, like very few Hawaiians make it to university, so it's a very small yet very contested space. So part of the theory and logic behind popular education is to take it to where the people are. And sometimes the street, as you know, Uncle, is where the people gather the most. And how can we bring these critical dialogues that are happening in places like this? And I know we're talking about how do we develop these legal kia'i to stand at the front line of defense for whatever it needs, but we also need to develop, and I learned this from you, Uncle, not just how do we defend ourselves, but how do we play offense, right? What are the positions that we need? What are the trick plays that we need? Who are the special teams players that we're going to pick up? And those are part of like a whole maybe strategy towards the university, but all of our collective resources maybe is a way to, I guess, address that. Sorry.
Thank you. I think we're coming to the close, and I see some people coming from the other room. I want to thank all of you who participated and asked questions, and I'd also like you to join me in thanking our panel.